Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to thank Sada. He led the prayer service on Wednesday nights for 2 or 3 years and has let it go to move on to other things. So I'd like to take this opportunity before the sermon begins to thank Sada for your service. Sada has brought us a great prayer consciousness into our ministry, and we're grateful that your yoga center is also here. So thank you.
Thank you.
So this month, our focus is on the idea of miracles and magic in our lives. So just being open to that idea and being open to having miracles happen in our life. And we began the beginning of October by calling in our animal friends and blessing them because they are a source of healing and magic in our lives. And then last week we talked about ordinary miracles, about how, just meeting somebody, not just, but meeting somebody, and particularly a partner in life, can be a very magical experience. And how if we were time traveling from 60 years ago to today, we would find that, bless you, we would find that some of our ordinary devices would be truly miraculous, or would seem so. So as we near Halloween, we turn our thoughts to magic and to mystery. Halloween has its roots in the Celtic culture. Bless you. It's that time of year. And it was called, it's catchy, I think, Samhain. Samhain was the name of the holiday that was celebrated on this day. It was the beginning of the Celtic New Year. The colors are black and orange, and it was said that this day, the border between the two worlds of the spirit world and this world are very thin. And so they believe that on this day, there was like an opening where spirits and souls who were deceased could come back and travel in this time. And so therefore, they had bonfires to call in the good spirits, and they wore masks to scare away the evil spirits. And the colors, black and orange, the orange symbolizing the bonfire, and the black symbolizing that we're moving toward shorter days and longer nights. And the call is to go within. The call is to begin to seek the soul. Now, the Catholics came in and saw this Celtic holiday, and so the name of it was changed to All Hallows Eve, Halloween. It's the day before All Saints' Day. And for us today, it's a day to have fun. It's a day to have a little trickster energy. It's time for kids to go out, and it's a time to have parties and put on a mask and try on a different personality, or to be a different kind of an archetype. And so one of the archetypes that I wanted to focus on today is that of the magician. Now, the magician archetype is, it could be said that it's the mystic within us who has made a breakthrough in our spiritual practice, who have done our spiritual work and worked with our spiritual principles, and have learned to bring into manifestation more consciously our hopes and our wishes and our dreams. The magician becomes a bridge through which spiritual power can be demonstrated. And probably the most recent and popular wizard and magician would be Harry Potter. He's probably the most conscious in our culture right now. I know my children were raised with Harry Potter because my son is Harry Potter's age, my daughter's Hermione's age, and so we read all the books aloud and walked through that whole experience with them, which was a lot of fun. Sallye Taylor, a Unity minister, said that the magician is a powerful and important archetype within all of us. What you and I mean when we say the Christ is an ultimate expression of the magician. So imagine that the Christ, which is the Spirit of God that dwells within all beings, it's a divine spark, it's also, in some sense, the magician. Again, it's working with spiritual principle, and it's having that sense of mastery. In other cultures, perhaps the magician would be called a shaman. So when I was looking at images of magicians this week, one of the images that came forward is the one that's found on the Sallye Taylor deck. And he is standing like this. He has one finger pointing up toward the sky, and the other is pointing down to the earth. And when we look at this symbol, what are we looking at? It's as above, so below. As it is in heaven, so it shall be on earth. Now, in this card, the magician also has a wand that he's holding up to the air. And if we think about it, isn't this who we are and what we are? We are bringing that which is unformed from heaven into the earth. And the truth is we don't need a magic wand because we are the magic wands. We are the bodies through which spirit is made manifest. We are the bodies through which bring this world into creativity and manifestation. So I'd like you to stand and try this stance with me because it's kind of cool. So one finger pointing up toward the sky, legs apart, firmly planted on the ground, and the other finger pointing down to the earth. And just imagine that what you're doing is you're bringing in your dreams, you're bringing in your wishes, and you're bringing them down through your body and into the earth. As was pointed out to me in between services by Jim, this is also the stance from Saturday Night Live. Thank you. You may be seated. So what's interesting about this is that in Buddhism there's also a mudra that is similar to this, and it's called the Varada mudra, which is where the hand is up like this. So it's not exact, I mean, it's probably more like this. Probably doesn't matter which hand you use, but the idea of as above, so below, and the idea of being open. And in Buddhism, this is about bringing compassion and bringing service into the world, being that instrument and allowing that to come into the world. So we see these images cross over. Now, as far as the magic wand, this is a Harry Potter one, by the way, not the one Harry Potter used, but from Harry Potter land. The idea behind a magic wand was pointed out in a thesis by John Granrose, and he said that we can picture the primitive man with his club and spear on a hunt, and then we can easily see the transition from the club to a scepter, to holding the badge of an office of a chief or a king, of holding that kind of a scepter or a trident. And the primary point in the wand is to point it at something and then focus the attention or energy on it. Now, the truth is we don't need that because that's who we are. But when I was looking at the scriptures this week, I noticed that Moses, in a sense, had a magic wand. Now, it wasn't called a magic wand, it was called his staff, it was called his rod. But if you think about kind of the things that he did with it, like when he's called by God by the burning bush, and he says, well, how are they going to know that it's you who are sending me? And he says, well, it's I am that I am. And, you know, he's kind of talking with God, and God says, take your staff and throw it on the ground. And so Moses takes his staff, he throws it on the ground, and it turns into a snake. And what does he do? He runs and he hides behind a bush because he's afraid, you know? And he picks it up and he uses this staff, this magic wand, this rod. He holds it up to the Red or the Reed Sea, and the seas part. He hits a rock in the desert twice and water appears. He uses it when he goes to the Pharaoh and you know, brings the plagues down. So it's an interesting concept of having the wand. And again, who's the wand? You're the wand. The physical body, the presence of you is the manifest wand on this earth. But what it does do is it becomes a point of focus for us. So if it's just having a tool to help us bring what it is we're wanting manifested into the world. A magician uses magical words and spells. The Herder Symbol Dictionary says that one of the most common magical spell words is abracadabra, right? Abracadabra. And apparently abracadabra is an ancient Greek word that comes from Abraxas, which is the god Abraxas, which is the name of the god of the year. Another definition of abracadabra is this: I will create as I speak. I will create as I speak. Abracadabra. Does that sound familiar to anybody? It sounds like the third unity principle, doesn't it? The law of mind action. The thoughts, the words that we hold, produce after their kind, that we bring the world into manifestation through our thoughts and our words and our actions. So every single one of us is the inner magician. Your words are the spells that you use to create your world. The question is, what kind of world are we creating? Now, many miracles in the Bible seem very magical. We look at the life of Jesus and, turned water into wine, walked on water, raised the dead, healed the sick. And one of unity's, something that we strive for, is to take the principles that are outlined by all the world religions, but also in Christianity, and to look at them and say, okay, so how can we do this in our lives as well? And the way we perceive Jesus is that of a way shower, that he sort of cleared the way. And he said, these things that I do, you can do as well. So when we look at some of the things, some of the miracles, some of the magic that he performed, we can take it apart piece by piece and look and go, okay, so how can I bring this into my life? And the one that comes up for me is the feeding of the 5,000, yeah? And what he did in Scripture when he realized that there wasn't enough food and there were, 5,000 people, and, a crowd can turn on you pretty quick. So, he needed to get some food. And so the first thing he did is he said, what have we got? And he looked at it and he said, thank you, God. He gave thanks for what he had. And then he told the crowds to sit down. Sit down, and the crowds represent our thoughts that can get a little bit out of control sometimes. So sit down and become quiet. It's also a way of creating divine order. So creating divine order and giving thanks and looking at what we have. And of course, you know the story where there was more than enough to feed the 5,000. Now, whether he magically manifested the loaves and the fishes out of thin air, or whether they had them stashed in their robes and went, okay, so maybe I'll share what I have. Either way, it's a miracle, isn't it? Elijah in the Old Testament, he was a prophet. He also performed magic and miracles. And a story that is told in Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth is a story of the widow who was out of money, and she was afraid that the debtors were going to come. And in those days, if you didn't pay your bills, you couldn't just file for bankruptcy or figure it out in different ways that we do. In those days, they would come and take your kids and sell them into slavery. So she had some sons, and she was afraid that her kids were going to be sold into slavery. So she called Elijah, who's a prophet, and her husband had worked with him, and she said, you need to help me out here. And like Jesus, he said, what have you got? She said, well, the only thing I have is this jar of oil. It's all I got. And he's like, all right, then I want you to go send your sons out, borrow a bunch of jars and vessels from all your neighbors, bring them back, and then close the door and lock it. So they came in. They have all these vessels. He picks up the jar of oil, and he pours it. And when it's full, he says, bring in another. And he pours another. And when it's full, bring another. And he continues to pour oil from this one limited jar until every single jar and vessel is filled in the house. Now, you would imagine that he'd have a magic wand to go, presto, this is a magic vessel filled with oil. And as soon as they ran out of vessels, as soon as they ran out of jars, the oil stopped pouring. The widow was able to sell the oil so that she could pay off her debts, plus have extra money. So this may seem like a magical story, and again, we look at it and go, okay, so where's the magic for me in this? What is this story about? And this story is about, and we practiced this in our Soul Trek group. We practiced this on the day that we had our workshop. And the idea is that we have our thoughts, our imaginations, we have our power of faith. And so we spent the day imaging and imagining that we were 5 years out, or that we were 1 year out. And we used journaling, we used sharing in circle, we used our bodies to physically bring ourselves there. And so in a way, we were playing with magic. We were building a bridge into the future. And in a sense, when you are seeking to call something into your life, you are using the magic of your mind to call it forth. And you are borrowing vessels, yeah? You may not have the jars yet. It may not be filled. You may not have what you're seeking to experience in your life yet, but as we begin to bring our imaginations out there and borrow that, we call it in. We're calling it in. And the thing about community is, when you share your vision with me and you share your ideas and dreams with me, I can witness that for you. I may not be able to do it for you, but I can witness that. And that's sort of like the neighbors and bringing in those vessels. So it's a wonderful prosperity story. And it's also, again, about look at what you have, because what we have increases. Now, in literature, as I said, Harry Potter is our latest wizard. And Harry Potter is half muggle, that is half human, and he's also half wizard. His mother was a muggle and his father was a wizard. And the truth is, you too are half a muggle and you're half a wizard, right? You are spirit and you are body. You are human and you are divine. And like Harry, who left to go to Hogwarts in order to study, we too are called to practice the spiritual principles and to try them out that were demonstrated by our teachers, that we see in our tapestries. We become true magicians when we recognize that our thoughts, our words, and our actions have power, that we are as above and so below. We stand in that power. Another way that we use our magic is through love and compassion, because love is a great and powerful force. Imagine the magic that you have when you have a baby with you, or a child, those magical moments, or when you first fall in love with somebody, how magical that is. And that love also is one of our tools. It's one of our wands that we have, if you will. And I love looking for current positive stories that are happening in the news today. And there was one that happened in Oklahoma this week. And a woman by the name of Jessica was doing her grocery shopping when she noticed that her wallet was missing. So her wallet had been stolen. And she walked up to this man and she said, "I know you stole my wallet because you were the only one in the aisle with me." So now imagine that you're a magician and your wallet has just been stolen. What do you do? So she went up to him and she said, "I have a proposal for you. And that is, you can give me back my wallet and I'll buy you some groceries, or you can keep the wallet, I'll take your picture and I'll call the police. What is it that you would like me to do?" And so he handed her back the wallet. She bought him groceries. And she said that when she did that the man started crying, and he apologized for his desperate act. And he said, "I'm embarrassed, I have kids, I'm broke, and I'm sorry." Her act of love was an act of magic. Her wallet had been stolen. She got it back. She manifested it back. And she did it in a way that transformed the experience that could have turned into something really ugly and escalated into something that neither one of them, a road that neither one of them wanted to walk down. But because she stepped back, as above and so below, she opened her heart and saw a different way. And who knows what good will continue to come out of her generosity. You are a magical being. We're all magical beings. And as we enter Halloween, recognize that a border between the two worlds is said to be very thin right now. We're entering into longer nights and shorter days where we're called to go within and seek deeper truths. So our thoughts may turn to tricksters and ghosts, to magicians, to the chance to be somebody else. But the magician is a powerful and important archetype that dwells within all of us. And what you and I mean when we say the Christ is the ultimate expression of the magician. So we honor all our teachers, all our magicians, all of our way showers. The truth is, again, that as being a magician, you don't need a magic word, you don't need a magic spell, you don't even need a magic wand. The words you speak and the actions you take are your magic spells. So go forth this week and create magic, or at least, Saturday Night Live. Bless you.